Welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. I'm Dennis Karatov. I'm here with Kasper Ozlowski. It's the 15th of February. We got an action-packed show for you, and it's not just because there's a big weekend of fights. There's also a couple of sexy guests, isn't there, Cass?
They are, and they are both sexy indeed. Today we have none other than legend Jens Pulver. I don't remember the last time Jens Pulver did an interview. He's going to do a fun interview with us. I mean, the guy is coming out of retirement, and he's been around for a long time, veteran. He's been through MMA eras. He's been through different eras. A lot of fun stories. We're going to be chatting to him, and got something old, and then you got something new. The latest is Urijah Faber. He had a fight just announced, I don't know, a matter of days ago. Frankie Edgar versus Urijah Faber himself. So we're going to be having him on the show, chatting to him about that fight, about a whole bunch of things, his thoughts on a whole lot of subjects. It's going to be a really fun show.
Yeah, that's right. Something old, something new. It's almost like we have to get something blue, and then we're having a big Submission Radio marriage to all these other people, to our fans and listeners. But, you know, Jens Pulver, such a legend. We speak to him about a whole bunch of stuff, and he's actually here in Australia doing a great thing. It's called Wimp to Warrior. We'll talk about it more in the interview, but guys, make sure you check it out, wimptowarrior.com.au. Also, jump on our official YouTube page, youtube.com/Submission Radio AU. If you're not listening through there now, we've got some fun interviews for you. A lot of legends on our channel lately. We've got interviews with Bas Ruud and Gio Gene LaBelle. We've got guys from the pro wrestling world like Bill Goldberg, who's looking to possibly get into glory soon. Also got really interesting interviews with guys like Frank Shamrock, Ken Shamrock. So it's all happening on the channel, Hoist Gracie. If you haven't been on there recently, jump on. There's some fun stuff for you, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. And also the Twitter @SubmissionAUS. We're always tweeting, always talking to our fans, always getting some cool comments. Love to chat to you guys. If you have anything to say to us, feel free to tweet us anytime, and we'll get back to you and have a bit of a chat, pretty much.
Yeah, and the other thing is, of course, with this big weekend, we'll be talking about some events. I mean, namely, we're going to be talking about UFC. I'm starting to forget what fight night this was. Henderson versus Thatch. I don't know what numerical number it was. But Henderson versus Thatch. We're going to be breaking down the card and talking about the events that transpired there. Don't forget on the YouTube channel, Dennis, you forgot old Frank Trigg. Really interesting, really interesting interview with him where we look back on his career and things like that and what would have been, etc. We've got Nick Diaz's coach who talks about their fallout just weeks before, I think it was like 2 weeks before UFC 183. Lots and lots to talk about and tons of content there. Oh, and Technique of the Week. Every single week, brand new content. Just from the last week or so, we've had the Yoel Romero inside leg trip, and then we've got Chris Weidman takedown variations. 3 different variations that Chris Weidman likes to use that go from the single leg. So don't forget to check that out as well.
That's right, guys. But without further ado, I know you guys want to hear from our first guest. We've got him on the line, so let's go to our first interview.
All right, guys. Our next guest had a very exciting announcement just recently. He will be going back up to Featherweight to fight Frankie Edgar at UFC Fight Night 65 on May 16th. We can't wait. When chat to him, it is none other than Urijah Faber. Urijah, welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Just getting some training in and eating like a pig, which is good.
There you go. I like how those two are going hand in hand, eating like a pig and getting some training in. But okay, I guess you are going up to featherweight. The big question is, how did this fight come about? Why are you fighting back at featherweight instead of your current weight class of bantamweight?
You know what? There's only certain people in this sport that are, in the position I'm in where I can go up to a weight and go back down to weight and be able to fight the top competitors, and I just want to take advantage of that. Frankie's a legendary fighter. He's a former world champion. I'm a former world champion, and I just want to challenge. And I feel like, can't wait around all day for Dominic Cruz to heal up. The guy's kind of fragile, and this is a fight that I've been, kind of wanting for a long time, and I feel like it almost happened a couple times, but the stars didn't align, and at this point, it's like kind of a dream matchup for myself. I'm sure for Frankie, and for the fans for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. You were actually on our show once, and you were speaking about how you and Frankie were originally supposed to coach the Ultimate Fighter, but it didn't end up happening. You've had some great fights recently, but the big criticism has always been, well, who's this guy that Uriah's fighting? They're not giving him, big name opponents. How does it feel to be in a super fight and going into a fight against a guy like Frankie Edgar, where everybody around the world knows who he is, and it's a fight that is so highly excited, everyone's so highly excited for?
It's great. I've been in big fights before. A lot of different times I've been in positions where it's a big deal, but it's hard at the lower weights to find guys with an established name and notoriety and a fan base. And I think that's kind of what's been missing in our division is multiple guys with a long history with the fans. So this is two guys that have that exactly. We're both known for fighting with heart and tenacity and going for the kill. And I'm honestly really happy not to have to cut down to 35. I feel like I'm about to die every single time I make the weight. I end up putting on between 18 to 22 pounds in 12 hours afterwards, and my body is already thanking me. And honestly, when I was a champion at 145 pounds, I'm heavier now than I was back then. Just I think being an older athlete, somebody that's been on the grind, and I think the cutting weight down, your body is like thanking you for not going through that process. So I've actually hit 162, 163 a couple of times, which is really big for me. And now it's just a matter of getting that strength and that size to kind of stay.
So with your fight against Frankie Edgar at featherweight, is this you going back to featherweight, or is this I'm going to do the super fight and then I'm going to go back to bantamweight?
I'm going to just kind of get a lay of the land. I know that I have the ability to do both. I can drop to 135 if I need to. I've proven that. If there's some real exciting matchups over there, then I might go back down. If there's some exciting matchups at 145. At this point in my career, I want to do the big fights, the fights that matter, and that's kind of where I'm sitting. So as much enjoyment as I can get out of this career, as many big things I can do in this career, the better. And I've always felt like that.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about this fight, Uriah. Frankie Edgar, amazing wrestler, great boxing, just a real all-rounder, definitely one of the best guys pound for pound in the division. Going up against a guy like that, what do you see as some of the advantages that you have against him in this matchup?
Yeah, I don't think we're really going to know until we get in front of each other. We're both guys that have a wrestling background, Division I wrestling background. I was top 12 in the nation. I believe he was top 12 in the nation also. He's probably a little bit bigger than I am, just naturally. I would say 8 pounds approximately. I don't know actually how big he is. I saw us standing next to each other, and there was some size difference a little bit, but I'm not sure who's going to be the physically stronger guy. I feel like his MMA wrestling is really good. I feel like my MMA jiu-jitsu is really good. It's going to be a question of who's faster. I feel like I'm going to be faster. He may think he's going to be faster. I feel really comfortable on the stand-up game. He's like kind of a traditional type boxer, and I'm kind of outside the box. It's just going to be a good matchup, man. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to get in there and really find out, who's the better guy.
Absolutely. And Frankie Edgar, the cool thing is that you guys have both been champions obviously in the past. He's a dangerous fight for anyone. What is it specifically that you have to look out for in his style, during your fight?
He has short, tight combos that I'm sure, when they're accurate, are very dangerous. So that's one thing. He also keeps a real high pace, which I'm used to, and that's what I'm known for as well. So I'm not sure. I've never been taken down and controlled in a fight in any time of my life, and I don't think that he's going to be able to do that to me, and I don't know if he's going to want to do that. I think he's going to come in, and if he feels like he's the slower guy and not able to hit me, I think he might go for the takedown. If I'd be down for a knockdown, drag out. I'd be down for a grappling match. I'm down for anything, man. I love this sport.
Now Frankie, for a lot of people, is the logical person that should be fighting Jose Aldo for the title. Obviously, Conor McGregor got the title shot. What do you think? Do you think Frankie got a bit of a raw deal in that situation with Conor going for the title shot instead of him?
Not necessarily. I mean, is he deserving of a shot? Of course, the guy's a warrior. He's been doing great, but I mean, we haven't seen Cub Swanson and McGregor fight. We haven't seen who was the fight before that
Lamas,
that Frankie fought before. Lamas. We never saw Lamas and McGregor. We have seen Frankie and Aldo, and I feel like Aldo did. I mean, I feel like he won that fight. So it's not like some crazy situation where he's getting robbed. I mean, McGregor can make a case for having that shot. So it's not like he's been robbed by any means, but we'll see. Maybe McGregor takes that shot, and maybe he wins the fight. You never know.
Well, that's interesting, and that sort of changes my next question, because the question is, if you beat Frankie, you've just beaten the guy that a lot of people, believe that, was deserving of that next shot. So win over him, and you could pretty much pick which title you fought for. Do you think that you would choose to stay at featherweight and have a rematch with Jose Aldo, or, of course, possibly Conor McGregor if he did beat Aldo?
I had a strange call from Dana that threw out the scenario of fighting for the belt with TJ, and I turned it down. I don't turn down fights. It's not my thing, but it would be kind of weird to fight TJ at 135. So if I could get, the shot at 145s, or even I feel like a fight with McGregor is a big fight right now. I'd do that in a heartbeat. He wants to go to Ireland. I'll be the heel in Ireland in front of 90,000 folks. Either way, I'm good for anything. I'm just gonna take one fight at a time. I've got a huge task in front of me, fighting a legend, one of the top fighters pound for pound in the world, in my opinion, Frankie Edgar, and I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, it's absolutely going to be a massive fight. We had your teammate Chad Mendes on the show a few weeks back, and obviously he spoke about Conor McGregor and his thoughts on Conor. I don't think many people actually know what you think about Conor. What are your thoughts about him as a personality and MMA? Are you a fan of his, and what do you think about his fight style?
I like it. I think I like his fighting style. He's got a great fighting style. We haven't really seen him tested with his grappling. The grappling seems to be pretty good, though. I don't know how he'll do against a great wrestler, but he definitely has some great movement, some great stand-up. As far as personality goes, I think he's a good guy. Yeah, I don't think he's being fake, which I like. There's guys that talk a big talk and are being a character, but they're not being real. And I feel like, that's really who he is, and I think that's fine, he believes in himself. He's got a quick wit. I'll do some banter with the guy if it ever gets to that. But I enjoy it. I think he's good.
I love it. You down for everything and everybody, Urijah. Now it seems like you mentioned before Dana White offered you that fight against TJ. So I'm assuming he had hopes that you were he believed that you were gonna probably take it. He often feeds the rumors about you and TJ fighting down the line. He said a couple of months back those guys have made it very clear that they will fight each other. We'll see what happens. I'm not really sure what that's about. The fight with TJ Dillashaw, is it likely down the line, or is it just Dana being hopeful that it happens at some point?
It's weird. I feel like I don't really feel like it was him pitching me. He goes, I know you think you're fighting Assunção, but what if I told you you're going to be fighting TJ for the belt in here? And I was like, man, that'd be kind of weird. I think I'd rather just fight, Assunção. That was kind of a conversation. He goes, okay, and then hung up. It was probably a 24-second conversation.
Oh.
And so I feel like he was like having a bet in his like a couple people in the room. It was after he had said that we'd fight each other, which never really happened. We hadn't had the conversation at all. So if TJ really wanted that fight and wanted me to fight him because it was going to be a huge payday and it was going to be the opportunity that, put him over and it'd be a great benefit to both of us, I mean, I would have that conversation, but it need to be, TJ, kind of bringing that to me.
Absolutely. And Dana White sounds like me when I used to try and pick up girls, using my mind tricks to get them to go on a date with me. But definitely something interesting that we'd like to see. You're right. I just want to clear up something for the record. You got frustrated recently because some Brazilian reporters reported that you pulled out of a fight with the undefeated prospect Thomas Almeida. You went on social media and set the record straight. But for those who didn't see a social media post and who might have thought that you pulled out of that fight, can you clear that up for us right now?
Yeah, I didn't get that, man. I just saw a tweet that said, and it was from a Brazilian source, I think, that said Urijah Faber denies the fight with Almeida or whatever his name is, and that just pure and simple wasn't true. My managers were in negotiations about this fight with Frankie, and they were throwing out a bunch of ideas, and it was never like, hey, are you going to take this fight? And I said no, or anything like that. They were just negotiating about what's the best fight at this point, and we all came to the conclusion that the Frankie fight, the fight that we've been talking about for a long time, was the fight to take, and it wasn't me denying anybody. The kid looks tough. I would have no problem fighting him. I like to maybe fight him in the future. But it wasn't like a thing where I turned down any fight. I've never turned down a fight.
Mm. Now, you mentioned, you've been saying how this Frankie Edgar fight's been in the cards for a long time. When we had you on that show ages ago, you said how you guys didn't quite manage to coach tough. And your manager, Mike Roberts, came out, I think just the other day, mentioned how it was the quote unquote, the hardest fight to put together for him ever. What was it about the fight that made it so hard to put together? I'm curious.
I mean, it wasn't that hard to put together. It was, well, they wanted to first have Frankie come down to 135s. Because they wanted him to, if he was going to win, then he was going to be in a title shot. They wanted to keep it in title contention. We were talking about doing a catch weight,
wow,
which would be, something like that. But they don't want to do catch weights because they don't want to set a precedent of doing catch weights because it doesn't have any relevance for a title shot. So what needed to happen, Frankie, in my opinion, knowing how much weight I cut and seeing myself next to Frankie, everyone tries to act like he can make 35s, and I don't know if he really could. Maybe he could. But he's bigger than I am, and I really, really struggle to make 35s. I mean, I feel terrible when I'm on weight for 35. I couldn't probably go to 33, or 34. I'm cutting it thin there. So I don't think that's a real case. So it needed to be, for this fight to happen, it needed to be me going up. And so that's what happened.
Now, Urijah, when we let the fans know you're coming on the show, as always, we've got a whole bunch of fan questions. We could only choose two, obviously, because we have a limited amount of time. So I'm just going to throw a couple of fan questions at you. The first one comes from a username by the name of The Night Rider. The Night Rider would like to, basically said, Urijah, you're a true legend of the sport and a pioneer in your weight class. What goes through your mind when guys like Anderson Silva are failing drug test after drug test? Is there an issue with PEDs and MMA, in your opinion?
And you know what? It's just kind of disheartening for myself. At a guy who's 35 years old, I've been in the sport 11 plus years, and it just sucks. Everyone's cheating, and I've heard that before. People have said, "Oh, I feel like 95% of people are cheating, and I feel like this amount of people are cheating." And I'm like, you know what? I have never taken any PEDs. And I always kind of assumed, I guess I'm a gifted athlete as far as, from genetics and things like that, but it's just not fair, man. I don't know what the solution is. But it's just not fair. I mean, it's obviously there is a problem. So it's unfortunate, and I'm just glad that I'm not part of the problem.
Yeah, well, that's good. Now, we've got another fan question. It's called Hawkeye for Life. He wants to know, you're right, it's well known that you're a very successful businessman, with Talk being one of the top MMA brands in the industry. How much will this exclusive Reebok deal affect your revenue and reach for your brands, not being able to sponsor fighters in the UFC? How much value did it bring to your brand over the year when you were a major sponsor?
I don't think it's going to be that big of an effect. There's the school uniforms that you have to wear to school, and then there's the stuff that you get to wear when you get to wear what you want. So for me, the businesses that have a good brand and are able to think outside the box will be fine. I mean, they take a small hit not being in ring, but people aren't just it's not like a cockfight where you got two animals in there and you don't know who they are, in their backgrounds, et cetera. Like, you know, we're people fighting in there, and we have different personalities and things like that. So people are aware of that, and they get invested in that. And you know, what you wear every day is a direct, you know, indication of the person that you are. So I don't think that it's going to be too bad of a deal for us at Torque.
Yeah, absolutely. When you mention school uniform, it just makes me shudder, Uriah. So hopefully, you know, they come up with something for that. Now, we're going to quickly finish out the interview with the Submission Radio tap-out round. It's basically where we throw some fun questions at you, and you answer with the first thing that comes to mind. So I'm going to kick it off, Uriah, and ask you, what's Urijah Faber's most prized possession?
My most prized possession? Jeez.
For me, it's my PlayStation 4.
my most valuable possession at this time it's kind of sad is my phone. I feel like I do so much business on it. I keep relationships on it. I can learn from it. It's like becoming a real crutch. So as far as my most valuable possession, that thing is kind of the cornerstone of my relationships in this world, which are my most important thing. You know, my friends, my family, my business partners. That's the things that interest me, and this is kind of a link to them all. So I would say that'd be something that's important to me. I'm not like a real material type of dude.
Yeah, I know, and I feel like that theory from Fight Club about don't let your possessions own you, that whole theory is completely obsolete nowadays. If I hate that my phone owns me. But the next question, right? We spoke about Torque. What's your favorite Torque shirt ever made?
Man, there's a lot of good ones. I've got one now that I'm wearing, and it's green, kind of I guess it would be like a wasabi green with a yellow. It's got 4 boxes on it. TRQ with a shield. There's Torque below, and I really like that one. It's got some cool design, but it's simple, and I like the color.
You guys have to watch out for that on the website. Now, last time you were on the show, you said the best advice a coach has ever given you. A lot of people know you're a great businessman. What's the best piece of business advice that you've ever gotten?
The best piece of business advice that I've ever had is actually from Lorenzo Fertitta, and I'd heard it before from other folks, but I had the opportunity to, Lorenzo was in town coaching his son's football, and in Sacramento, and he was gracious with his time and came and met with my EO group, this entrepreneurial group, and we asked a bunch of questions. And his thing that rung the clearest to me was, first off, I could tell how passionate he was about business and he was doing what he loved. But the second thing was, he just said he surrounds himself with people that are smarter than him. He said, if I'm the smartest person in the room, then we're all in trouble. And I like that. I think that's part of the success of the UFC has been constantly acquiring new talented people to help grow, and so that came from Lorenzo Fertitta.
Very smart. Now, just quickly, Uriah, what was it like working with Kenny Powers for K-Swiss, and do you have any funny stories you can share?
Oh man, it was awesome. Danny McBride is the real life Kenny Powers, but it was funny because him and Jody Hill were, who's the director producer. They are like just two buddies, so they were like doing a lot of ad libbing, and he, the director Jody, they went to film school together and were like living in the same apartment, etc. And they just had this funny relationship where he'd be like, all right, this time now stick your finger in there and be like, put it in and out and just say, hey, get what I'm doing. Like, there's all these ad-lib things to say. There's just two buddies having fun. So it was pretty cool.
Wow, that would be amazing. Now, Uriah, do you have any inspiration in having your own thriller in Manila on May 16th? Because obviously it was the historic place where the epic Ali versus Frazier fight happened.
Yeah, no, it's going to be cool, man. That's a huge fight. It's a huge venue. I mean, the Thrill in Manila has such a place in the history of the fight world, and to be there again, it's an epic fight is pretty awesome. you also have the East Coast West Coast battle between Frankie and I, and both former champions that have moved to weight classes. So it's an exciting one for me, man.
Absolutely. Second last question, Urijah. Any advice for Dominic Cruz during another difficult time in his career?
You know what? I've given the guy advice before. It's just basically, stay positive, and I think he's doing a decent job of it. He's staying busy, and I don't think the guy really has any quit in him, so I'm sure he'll be back sooner or later. It just, he's a fragile dude, man. You know what I'm saying?
Finally, Urijah, let's finish this off. Give us your prediction. How do you plan on beating Frankie Edgar at the Thriller in Manila 2?
I plan on beating him however I can. I want to beat him in the punch. I want to beat him in the scrambles. I want to be the guy that outlasts. I'm looking to finish always, and whether it's a punch or a choke, I think I'll be happy with anything.
Well, there you go, guys. We're excited. It's a super fight. You can't miss it. And the date to watch it is May 16th, of course, UFC Fight Night 65. And, of course, follow Urijah Faber on Twitter at Urijah Faber. As always, Urijah, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You got it, brother. Thank you.
This is Randy Couture, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Our next guest is the first ever UFC lightweight champion, the first lightweight to main event at UFC event, a prior 2005 lightweight Grand Prix quarterfinalist and a huge part of the legendary Miletich camp. He now calls Sydney home while he is head coach for Wimp to Warrior, a show where he transforms an everyday person into an MMA fighter. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Lil Evil Jens Pulver to the program. Jens, it's an honor to have you.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
It's really great having you on the show. Now, Jens, as people may or may not know, you're currently in Sydney for the new season of Wimp to Warrior. What was it that drew you to being a part of such a unique program?
I think for me, when I first seen it, and we were just laughing about this, my wife and I were talking about it, and of course I was talking with Richie, how the whole thing started. Twitter. Someone said, hey, you should get Jens Pulver to check out this Wimp to Warrior. And I got a look, and I'm like, oh, I'm in. I like it. And boom, next you know, I come out to visit. And the first time I seen it, cooked. I came back to the finale at Luna Park, and that's all she wrote. I'm like, I'm in heaven. Sign me up. And, and they said, well, would you come out to coach? And luckily for me, my wife is extremely, extremely supportive, very busy as is. And he's like, yeah, you know what, let's do it. And so she sent me off out here, but I've been there. It's the beautiful side of MMA, and once I seen this, I had to be a part of it. This is what I've been waiting for my entire career.
Now, Jens, we've got a lot of listeners from around the world who may not have heard of Wimp to Warrior. Just for those people, could you explain what the concept of the show is and what Wimp to Warrior is all about?
Yeah, my version is what it is. And when I say everyday individual, I don't mean like I'm walking around as some sort of superhero, but we all have the things that we are comfortable with. Like I couldn't walk in and just start slamming down, correspondence. I couldn't start typing stories. I couldn't even doing interviews and stuff like that, doing your homework and things. Everybody, you kind of start to form your own habit. You get comfortable, whatever your world is. My world happened to be MMA, and I worked on punching, dodging, getting out of things, getting in shape, blocking kicks, things like that. Most are like, oh my God, it's so hard, but that was kind of my thing. But when I say everyday people, I just mean we're all everyday people, but so they come into our world, and it's the beautiful side of MMA. It's taking all the best parts of MMA, the fitness, the camaraderie. You're out there. You're an individual. You're trying to be on a team. You're not on a team standing out there throwing off your helmet, ripping off your jersey, doing whatever you can do to get your 5 seconds of fame and be an individual. You're not trying to dog on your team and, hey, look at me, I'm trying to be an individual. We're all individuals, and you're going to have that moment. You're going to step out there, and you're going to be by yourself, and you're going to represent you, your family, your coaches, everything that you've learned. So the best part, the camaraderie comes into it, is we're all individuals trying to be on a team, and that's one of the aspects that I love. The fitness aspect is rather than walking into a gym and just looking at some weights and going, man, you know what? Okay, I'll lift this, but, here the workouts are designed. They're set up. All you have to do is dress up and show up. And we'll take care of the rest. And that's something that I've always loved. We want to get the frustration out. We want to hit. We want to box. We want to do a move, bang on a bag, get to roll around, do the jiu-jitsu, learning submissions, learning positions, wrestling, all little things. Great fitness. You learn how to diet. And we're in there. And the best part is why it takes so long is it's not like the Ultimate Fighter where it's 8 weeks and that. This is 5 months, 5.5 months, because the first 3 months, we're going to get you literally from the couch to the gym, and we're going to get you in shape and build the body. Then from there, when we get that machine ready to run, then we're going to give it a racetrack. Then we're going to give it its destination, and we're going to show you how to get there. And at the end of it, you get to do the bucket list, and you're going to do one fight out there for everybody to see, for you to represent yourself and your friends and your family and your coaches and everything you've done. But rather than having quote-unquote teams, we have a red team and a blue team, all coached by the same coaches. Everybody is equal. That's the one thing is we don't take anybody that is you cannot be an MMA fighter. You could have been a great college wrestler, so to speak, 15 years ago. And then when you come back, you know what I mean? Now I've heard stories that that people are like worried about, what happened? No, I mean, we'll try to keep the slate as clean and as neutral and as open as possible. And those are the people that we want. And right now, I mean, I've been looking at 65 guys, men and women. Amazing. It's to me, it's just the most, again, it's the beautiful side of MMA. Everything that I love about MMA that I get to pass on to every one of these people. And then, ironically, we still have people from season 1, season 2. I'm looking at them right now back in here in Sydney at the Wimp the Warrior Gym training and still loving it. It's a lifestyle, and that's the one thing we get to pass on. We're changing lives, man, one punch at a time.
It's awesome. It's great to see, MMA having such a positive impact on people's lives, and also to see how, how passionate you are about it. Jens, we wanted to go back in time. You speak a lot about training. Not a lot of people may know, but you actually trained with Bob Shamrock back in the day. What's it like training at the line? What's it like training the Lions Den? And what was Bob like? Apparently, a young Nick and Nate Diaz would stop by.
Number one, may he rest in peace, and he's the epitome of what I started. And it was an amazing deal. When I first started, I was wrestling up at Boise State University. And I think the heavyweight, hopefully they've taken it down by now, but maybe not. I still have my little shrine, So I was up there with the wrestlers, and I was a wrestler at Boise State University. And then I got to meet the famous Bob Shamrock, and he said, come on down. I met him at a UFC, and I just started talking to him, and I went down and started training down there at Shamrock 2000. And the one thing was still back then, everybody still had dead jobs. There was no money in MMA. It wasn't, we were doing it because we loved it. And it was, again, banned in all but 3 states. They didn't even have 155 pounds. So you have to be out your mind to even think you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And, or fight heavier or how it was. So when I went down there with him, he taught me. He had the boys home, and that's how Ken and Frank Shamrock, he adopted them. There was a point where I was telling him, hey man, I want to change my name. I want to be a Shamrock. I want to be, I want to change my name. But he was always there for his kids. He always ran those boys homes, and he took care of them, and so I learned, and that's who started teaching me, and I started learning full well right there about giving back. And, he was a phenomenal mentor, and he was an amazing person. Everything kind of had to part ways, and I went back up to wrestling because I wanted to do it full time. So when people talk about my career, I always tell them VHS to Blu-ray. That's literally my career.
Yeah.
When I first started, again, everybody had jobs. They would show up after work, and we would train for a couple hours. Everybody high-five, and they'd be gone. But I was a college wrestler. That's what I did all day long. If I wasn't in class, I was wrestling or lifting or, doing something. And so I wanted to do it full time. And that was that crossroads. So that's where, we were waiting for those athletes. And that's when it was Bob Shamrock who talked to Monty Cox. Monty Cox lived out in Iowa and had a little, and was a promoter for the Extreme Challenge, which had all these insane fighters. And I used to be like, oh my God, I loved it. I'm hearing about Pat Miletich. Obviously, he was the welterweight champion.
Yeah.
Champion Horn, my favorite fighter on the planet. This little guy, Matt Hughes, was just starting to fight. I'm like, oh, man, really? So he called them, and they had, you know, I met them at my first UFC fight, and I went out there to start training with them. And the minute I did, guess what they were doing full time? We had workouts from at 9 o'clock to 12. Then we had the afternoon off, and we're back again in the afternoon. I'm like, oh, good Lord, I'm in heaven. And I've been in Iowa ever since, man. I've been stuck in Iowa from that day. So Bob knew, and that's the one thing I learned about him, is the ability to go out and train and do other things. He wasn't like, nope, you're here, you have to be at this gym, you cannot be anywhere else. He's seen it. He's seen it. I was there every day. In fact, here's the story that most people don't know. This is why I'm so close to Nick Diaz. This is why he's like a little brother to me. There was this 16-year-old kid who would come in after school, and he would sit there and he'd punch a heavy bag, and he was training every day, drilling. And since I was in there every day, I'd always see him. Like, hey, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, I'm have a break from school, or, you know, school just got out, so I'm in here working on my hands. So we just started hanging out. Later on, he gets into his first UFC a few years later, obviously, and I'm looking at him, and obviously he's much bigger. He goes, you don't remember me, do you? He goes, man, I used to train with you every day at Shamrock 2000. It's me, Nick Diaz. And so that's how far back Nick and I go. So he's like a little brother to me. And most people don't know that. But when I was first starting, he was just a youngster, and he was always in there. And I was, again, most people are at work. I was there all day. And so Nick was my little buddy. So I would sit there and hit the bags with him. And, you know what I mean, when he'd get off from school. And that's how far back I go with Nick. So it was real cool to have Nate Diaz later on, being able to coach him on The Ultimate Fighter. But, yeah, that's how far me and Diaz goes, all the way back to Bob Shamrock, may he rest in peace. And the irony is still this. When I left Bob's house to go to Iowa. I took a train for 2.5 days. And I remember sitting there on that train, I wrote down goals and what I wanted to do. But I left everything behind. And I had showed up in Iowa with 2 bags. I had 1 bag with workout gear, and I had 1 bag with clothes. That's all I had. I had nothing else.
Wow.
And I slept at the gym, and thank God for Monty Cox and his family. They allowed me to stay at their house. I got to know them a little better, and they trusted me enough. Hey, you know, you can. So I got to, you know, and Monty basically opened the door and let me stay with his family. So I'm extremely thankful for that. And then I just spent every day at the gym training and said, here we go. It's time to go. I'm here for a reason. Let's go be a world champion. And so yeah, I literally showed up with 2 bags. Said, okay, I'm ready. Point me in a direction, you know.
Wow, what a
answer. Oh.
What a story, Jens. You know, I want to ask you about your first championship in the UFC, but before that, you know, you did mention Nick Diaz and how close you were. Were you a little bit disappointed when you heard about, you know, him testing positive for marijuana again, and now he's got to go face the commission, and it looks like, you know, they may make an example out of him, and he may miss a couple of years of fighting.
I wish they would stop doing that, you know. I mean, because, again, what are we talking about when people are getting mad about steroids and growth and things like that? What are we pissed about when we're testing for that? When people fail those tests, what are we mad? Why are we mad? Their performance enhancing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Correct?
Correct.
At what point has anybody grown up all them God-given videos you had to watch when you were a kid? Now, this will be the first time I've ever actually spoke out about this, so hopefully I'm going to not get too crazy. But,
sure.
No, but I'm just saying, at what point did anybody – weed was supposed to make you stupid, slow, clumsy, fumbling, forgetful, okay? At what point are any of those attributes, if you can even call them attributes, performance-enhancing?
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
So, okay, granted, illegal. Hey, we're not talking about that right now. What I'm talking about is performance enhancing. What I'm talking about is I'm going to throw a fine on you. I'm going to throw a penalty on you the same way I'm going to throw it on this guy who just failed for D-ball and every other performance enhancing drug. You failed on weed, which is, to my knowledge, makes you sleepy, hungry, and basically clumsy. Doesn't sound very performance enhancing. So you're pounding me. You're gonna make me go through the same. I have to go through the same thing. Now wait, why can't I go to drug rehab for a day? No, nobody. I mean, no, I'm dead ass serious.
Yeah.
Pardon my language, but That's what pisses me off about this is, and it's not just because it's Nick or anybody else. I'm just mean. So are we calling marijuana what we've been learning since we were kids, babies? Are we calling marijuana performance-enhancing drug? Because if so, then by all means, slap on the same kind of fines, fees, and penalties that you were going to bust somebody for doing Dynabol, anabolic this, growth this, and performance-enhancing drugs. And I'm going to give you the same thing for doing what actually is supposed to be, what I've always been taught, to do the opposite, make you fat, tired, and sleepy. That's my point. That makes no sense to me. I don't understand why you would do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the performance-enhancing aspect, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess the big thing here is it looks like Anderson Silva will get punished, but Nick Diaz is going to get punished a lot worse than him, and that's for doing marijuana.
And I don't understand why. Is that okay? Are we talking about criminal? Are we talking about why? If it's not performance enhancing, why? And that's what I would have to ask any one of them. Not to mention that, how many times have you been busted?
This would be his third time.
Why even test him? He's never said he's not. He has his card, I believe, right? I mean, isn't it legal if you have a card in California or whatever it is? Isn't it legal?
I don't know if he has a card, to be honest. I'm not saying he doesn't, but I
don't.
have no idea.
I don't know. I mean, again, I'm only, and that's why I'm trying to stay out of the political side of it all. I'm not trying to say right, wrong. I'm not trying to say foul or not.
Yeah.
All I'm asking, and my only question is, aren't they two separate things? Performance-enhancing drugs, which seems to be just running rampant with steroids and, the growth hormones and things like they're supposed to increase your performance. All the classes I've ever learned or taught since we were little kids, and the dude was singing on a videotape about how weed makes you dumb and, Tally getting high, trying to pass the bill.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? It's about eating munchies and, you know what I mean, whatever it is, but it makes you clumsy. It doesn't sound performance enhancing.
Yeah. No, I mean,
and somebody said, go ahead, what?
No, I was just going to say, I completely understand where you're coming from. And I mean, it's one of those things that's been debated for so long, and usually majority of people are on the same side that you are on. So in a time when guys like Anderson Silva are popping for steroids, it's definitely a worthy sort of point. I just want to jump to something else, Jens. I want to talk about your championship reign. You were the first UFC lightweight champion back in the day before the division really blew up. Did you realize how much of a big deal it was going to be at a time when you held the belt?
I knew it. I believed in it from day one. I know sometimes Dana feels like, I bailed on the UFC, or, I didn't believe how big it was going to be. I knew how big this was going to be because when I started out to become a fighter, it was legal in 3 states. They just had the 170-pound class, and there was no talks of doing a 55 or below. People used to tell me, well, you're going to have to go 170 pounds. I said, no, I'm absolutely not going to go 170 pounds. I'll just knock enough people out. I remember this verbatim. I remember the words. I'll knock enough people out, they'll make my weight class. We'll make 155. And that's what I did. I just kept fighting at 170. I fought guys that were 230, whoever. I fought for videotape. I fought for free just to have videotape. VHS, man, videotape. And I knew that I believed in this sport because to me it was wrestling. I went as far as I could in wrestling. Wrestling got knocked down so small that there literally were 10 weight classes. You had to be in the top 3 in the country to be on the national team to even have any kind of chance at making any kind of money to do it for a living. So I knew I was done with that, but I wanted to continue to compete. I always felt growing up that, I always wanted to be a boxing world champion. I always wanted to be a world champion boxing. It was a dream of mine because I never heard about something like MMA, And then when I was in college and this stuff started, I was in high school and this thing started coming on, like, oh, good Lord, look at this, like wrestling with training wheels. I can start punching, but man, I can always keep my wrestling. Oh, I've been waiting for something like this because I always felt like, you might be able to beat me on the mat. You might be able to out-wrestle me, but boy, if I could just add in a couple of punches, things might be different. And sure as heck, I got to find out and prove it. And to me, that was the one part. I knew this was going to be big. I put my life into a sport that, like I said, was legal in 3 states. it didn't even have my weight class. It wasn't even on TV. It was kept alive via the internet. MMA Underground, love you guys. You know what I mean? The MMA forums. And I looked at my principal, and she told me this. I had just gotten my job. I was going to be the wrestling coach at Timberline High School. I was going to be a resource officer. I was going to help kids make decisions on, getting good grades and going to college, And I had the job for 2 months, and I got asked, hey, we want to do this 155-pound fight between you and Alfonso Alcaraz. We're going to title it 170, but I want you guys to both weigh in at 155. John Peretti goes, this is going to be my project. Now, again, back then, we're talking 6 shows a year. There wasn't that gigantic undercard of 15 fights, you know what I mean? And so they were going to make a new weight class. Oh, it's crazy. And so we went out there and we fought at 155 pounds. And I remember telling the teacher, look, I need to go do this. I want to go down here to California. I want to train with Bob Shamrock because I knew the name. I was familiar with it. And, I've been waiting my whole life. And she told me this, and I still remember to this day. She goes, here's the deal, Jens. Life is short. Your athletic life is just a sliver. If life is short, your athletic life is just a sliver. You can always come back and help kids. You can always come back and talk to kids. You can always come back and direct kids. So when you go do this, you do it for all it's worth. And that's where I came up with saying, you ride it till the wheels fall off. I said, thank you. Because she's the one that gave me the job. She's the one that gave me her blessings. And with that, 2 bags, off I went to start this insane journey called MMA. But that's how much I believed in it.
Wow.
And now I see Wimp to Warrior, and here I am, all the way. I don't even know how far. It's a heck of a train ride. Oh,
Yeah.
Showed up with 2 bags, left my family. Thank God for Skype
Yeah.
and social networking. Left my family to come out here and be a part of something I believe in more than, or just as much as I believed when I wanted to be a world champion in the UFC.
Wow. And, I wish me and Casper had good teachers and good people to work with like that. She sounds like a wonderful person. Now, one fight I have to touch on because it was an instant classic was your fight with BJ Penn. What did that win mean to you? And what was going through your mind when you stood toe-to-toe and exchanged strikes in that exciting 5th round?
The thing was this. I still remember I was commentating when he fought Cal Uno. And he walked out there, and he destroys Uno, and it had to be, I think it was 20 seconds.
Yeah.
This is the man that they flew me to Japan to watch him fight Rumina Sato. And if you don't know Rumina Sato, everybody, please, YouTube him. You'll thank me later. You want to talk about a man well before his time with submissions, go get a gander of Rumina. It's ridiculous. And so I was sitting there, and I'm watching these 2 fight. I'm watching Uno wins, defends his belt. Dana Lorenzo looked at me and go, that's who you're fighting. And I remember verbatim, this. The one thing they always wanted, they go, when you look at a UFC belt, nobody's going to say, oh, my God, but you still have the Pride champ, or you have this guy, he's the champ of this organization, the champ of this. You're going to be like, oof, the UFC, that's it. There is no belt bigger. That is the belt. And they proved it. They went out and grabbed the best 155-pounder on the planet, Cal Uno, and they bought him in. You don't think I'm second-guessing my world. I'm like, man, really? Am I good enough to fight that? So when I fought him, it was for 25 minutes, and I beat him. Now I'm hearing about this super kid, BJ Penn, who is a dynamo on the ground, a world champion, first ever U.S. American Jiu-Jitsu world champion. And he's knocking everybody out on his feet. And he goes out there and he knocks Cal Uno out in 20 seconds on his feet. And I remember Osborne commentating to me and goes, man, Jens, I don't envy you, brother. That's going to be your next opponent. Man, I do not envy you. And I still remember, thanks to Joe Silva, I looked down and I said, you know what? He ain't evil. He ain't me. Bring it. So I was sitting there cage side commentating when BJ destroyed Uno. There was no ifs, ands, buts under the sun. I was a 7-1 underdog. We were the first ever main event at the Mohegan Sun, lightweight main event at the Mohegan Sun. One story that, if you really want me to get holistic, this will blow your mind. I will tell this story if you want, but it's going to take like 10 minutes because I'm long-winded. But here's one that most people don't know unless you were there. The Mohegan Sun, the hotel itself wasn't built yet. And so we were staying at this Best Western. They had the whole hotel with all the fighters and everybody staying there. And flying on the plane, we had a delay, so we all came in on the same plane. And I'm laughing, having a good time, just high-fiving Matt Hughes and Jeremy Horn and, Pat Miletich stuff. We're just laughing. Tony Fricklin, we're just giggling. BJ couldn't understand it. He couldn't get it. What? Doesn't he know he's got to fight me? What's he laughing about? What's he smiling for? Is he really this wrecked? And it wrecked him. He didn't like it. He's like, I can't look at this guy for the week. So he shipped off to a different hotel. Boy, that was a blessing and a half, but here's why. Evidently, this food poisoning went around. Some guys started getting it early, and they were lucky. Like, they were going to the hospital, have to get shots and IVs. It was giving people the shakes. It was horrible. I think I don't tell much about it, but Dave Monet, I feel so bad for Dave Monet, and nobody has ever clarified this. When he fought Murilo Bustamante, Dave Monet was the champion. When they pulled this is how tough or stupid. I don't know which one I don't know who would say what, but this is, in my world, this is how tough Dave Monet was. He's on the toilet, throwing up out of his behind with the runs, leaning into a garbage can, throwing up. It hits him right around fight time, the flu bug or whatever that thing is, hits it. So that poor kid is sitting there doing that, and looks up at them, and they go, it's time. He goes, it's time? Yeah, he goes, oh. Now, I had heard about a couple of guys, they went and got the shot, they had 2 or 3 pairs of shorts on because they were getting greasy. They were juiced, because it gave you you had the runs. This food, whatever this was horrible. And they look at me and they go, all right, but it's time to go. He wiped off his mouth, washed out his mouth, put on his clothes, and went out and fought like that. You've got to be kidding me. And he got beat. Yeah. He did it because he was the co-main event, and he was not going to let that thing forfeit. He was not going to. There's not a man alive today that would be in that situation with this kind of money that would do what he did to honor his own word. Me, I'm up in my hotel. I got nowhere to go. I'm playing video games. I'm cool. It doesn't hit me. I get through the fight. I beat BJ Penn. And no, I did not tap on that armbar because we all knew how much time me, BJ, and Big John could hear Jeremy Horn counting. We knew how much time was left. So what happened is right at the bell, boop, I'd punch him and go get him off me because we all heard about the time. I got lucky that the fence very helped me, but I was wiggling. Oh, I was in trouble, but I was wiggling. But we all knew how much time. So when Bob was yelling, he tapped. I didn't tap. I yelled, get him off me because we all heard the time. But so 4 hours after the fight, I'm laying down, and it hits me. Oh, wow. The most violent flu runs I've ever. Here's how I met poor Tony Fricklin's mom after 2-hour drive because I had to keep making him pull over so I could heave on the side of the road. I get to his house. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Fricklin. Very nice to meet you. Where's your bathroom? Is that your bathroom? Thank you. And I went in there and started throwing up and stuff on the floor. For the first 2 days, they're like, is he okay? No, he's not okay. He's sick. So I tell the story. It was all stars had aligned for me to go out there and show everybody this is why you do not make Jens a 7-1 underdog. You do not tell him that he's going to get knocked out or submitted or beat, at least the younger Jens. Oh. And even the flu had to wait 5 hours before it could completely decimate me because I was going to win that damn fight. So there's my story. Most people don't know that, but now they know.
When people tell that story in like 100 or 1,000 years, Jens, they're gonna say how like you actually controlled the flu and like you met up with the flu and you pushed it to the side. He said, "Come back in 5 hours, man. I got to fight," and stuff like that. It's gonna be like a mythological story.
Dude, could you fathom the cartoon right now? Rolls up on a dust cloud like the pale rider coming in from the devil, and you got to make the deal. Look, here's the deal, buddy. You give me this fight. Then you can come in and just tear my body to shrapnel, because it tore me. Oh, my God, it was 3 days before I could even function. At one point, I was dry heaving so bad, I just had to tell him, dude, don't even pull over. There's nothing in me. There's nothing going to come out. I go, it's whatever.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, it was 5 hours after that fight.
Wow.
I have never been, to this day, I've never been so sick. Ever. Wow. Me and the victims, we still laugh about that. But yeah, it's like, that'll be the cartoon. Wait, hold on. This is my destiny. Sit there, and then like you get out of the cage, here comes the cartoon, you go back and lock him, and go, okay. Take a deep breath and breathe her on in.
Yeah. You're going to live to be like 100 years old, Jens. When the Reaper comes, you're going to be like, "I'm not ready for you, man. Go away." Come back in like 20 years. He'll be like, "Oh, okay, that was weird. That was awkward." And then he'll come back.
Yeah, let's do it.
I was going to say, we've probably only got about 10 minutes, Jens. We're going to run through.
I'm long-winded, man.
That's okay. We're going to ask you a few more questions, something that we really wanted to know, because we had Pat Miletich on the show just very recently, and everybody knows about everybody knows about the crazy wars, the gym wars, the sparring sessions. I want to talk about that. You train obviously with the Miletich camp. What was it like on sparring day? Can you take us through that? What was the feeling like when you knew you were a few hours away? And tell us about those gym wars.
Oh, here's the thing, and I remember it more than I remember it verbatim, and we all thought it, and we all believed it back then, especially. If I'm going to experience a broken nose, or if I'm going to experience a leg kick so deep it takes 4 weeks before the bruise even shows up, or I'm going to experience a liver shot, or the power of a man smashing down on me and pinning me sitting in side mount and I can't move, or a guillotine, I don't want to find out for the first time in the cage against an opponent. And we believe that. If you're not pushing, if you're walking in there and you're beating up everybody, you're in the wrong gym because you're not learning. You know what I mean? And that's just what we were. That was the time where we did it full time, and we just were tougher and fitter than everybody else. And sometimes the kicks and the punches were mind blowing. But guess what? I was never surprised. In fact, when I went to go fight BJ Penn, the only confidence I had more than anything else was this: you do not wrestle like Matt Hughes. No way you're that strong. You cannot kick like Pat Miletich. I'll guarantee it. And you are not as well-rounded as the infamous I cannot get hurt Jeremy Horn. So I had the confidence of knowing my team, that the quote-unquote hell I went through. My day off was when I stepped into that cage, because I actually got to fight somebody that was my weight, and I didn't know him. So I could actually just start going after this, just let it go.
Yeah.
I could put all those things I learned. And that's what we did. We made each other the toughest rat pack you could find. And it wasn't out of maliciousness. It was not out of hate. It was that's where the sport was. That's what we needed at that time. We were the fittest and we were the baddest because we pushed each other. If I'm going to get beat up, it's going to be by my brother, not by the guy that's coming in here. Don't be one of the cornermen. The hardest job I ever had was being a cornerman. I loved being in the cage because I did not want to see people hit my brother Matt Hughes. I did not want to see people try to touch Jimmy Horn, and I damn sure didn't want to see nobody hit one of my teammates or try to beat up Pat Miletich. Couldn't stand. None of us could. We all wanted to be the ones fighting, and that's what I said in the very beginning. Why I love Wimp to Warrior. Why I love MMA and the individual combative sport. We were dying to be on a team. Let me go. I'll go first. Let me get in the cage. And I always was the first one. I was the first one to walk out of that locker room. There'd be 4 of us in that locker room getting ready to fight on a UFC card. You really think I'm not going to be the one that comes back? Oh, man. Oh, Jen, so sorry. I'm not going to. We come back. Yeah. There you go, guys. I set the pace. Come on. You know what I mean? That's how much I love those guys. So when people talk about we were young, and we were beating each other up because nobody else was going to. I can beat up my brother, but you better not touch my brother, because if you do, oof, God, it's going to suck.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And hopefully there's no crazy sparring sessions in Wimp to Warrior just yet. But I was going to ask you, Pat was on the show and he mentioned, and this is just something I want to really quickly touch on. He spoke about one of you guys, Robbie Lawler, obviously amazing moment, won the championship. He discussed how he believed that, if he versus GSP, he'd actually beat him if a fight eventuated. Just wondering, this is a big hypothetical that a lot of fans are wondering. And as a guy that knows Robbie very well, how do you think a fight would go between Robbie and GSP?
I think the same thing, that if Robbie didn't doubt the way his confidence is right now, it's amazing. I knew that he could beat Johnny because he does a phenomenal job of moving like a boxer. He can cut angles and he can set it up. Somehow Johnny got him to stand right in front of him, and he got picked apart. And I think he learned his lesson. GSP does a great job of getting you to come towards him, and then he'll start taking you down. So he picks on he'll pick on a wrestler by going after their strengths. He'll pick on a striker by going after their strengths. But Robbie has a different set. He has a different tool set. I think that's the one thing, is he won't get bait. If he moves like a boxer and he does everything behind that super jab that he has, and he is finding his groove now, it would be a phenomenal fight because he has the same kind of patience that GSP does. GSP will pick. He will pick at your iron. He will pick at your armor and find the openings, and then he'll go in, boop, boop, boop. And then once it starts to open up, and all of a sudden you're ready to block his wrestling, then he starts striking you. That's the one thing about GSP, is he goes where you're strongest and he beats it. Then he makes you switch to where you're weakest, and then he beats on that even more. And Robbie has anybody that has that kind of power, you have to fear. But anybody that has that kind of movement and the ability to get to his feet as fast as he can, oof, man, you know what I mean? It makes it tough. He's got great conditioning. He's got a great coach, and he has found his groove. He has found his groove. I don't personally, GSP is a phenomenal. He's an awesome strategist. He will pick at you. Some people won't call it exciting or whatever, but I think it's extremely exciting because he goes where you're strong and he beats it. He goes where you're weak and he exploits it. And that's what I love about him. But with Robbie, the groove that he has found now, it would just be, if he keeps his patience and he keeps his demeanor that he has, it would be an extremely tough game. I think he gets frustrated. I think he gets hurt and drive GSP nuts. Unless the one thing that Robbie needs to run, or the only problem right now for like Robbie or anybody, is a wrestler that wants to clinch. Again, if you've seen Robbie, whoever can get him to stop and stand right in front of you. When Johnny Hendricks it seemed almost hurt, he was able to get Robbie to stop and just sit there and paw and paw and paw, and then Johnny was able to land the right hand, and Johnny was able to throw that kick, and he was able to land him and then move, and Robbie didn't do anything. But when Robbie slides side to side, Robbie moves like a boxer. Like he and I used to sit there and watch videos of young Mike Tyson, young Michael Moore, a young Evander Holyfield, Muhammad Ali, all these people. We would study them all day and watch this movement. Bobby can move like a boxer. The Bob can hit, slide in, and he can hurt you with both hands. Johnny Hendricks and guys like that can't. GSP can, but it would be a matter of, I think Robbie's just real patient as well and wouldn't fall into the game that GSP can lull you into. And it'd be a lot of fun. It'd be a lot of fun to watch. But, I don't know. And I personally would probably have to, with everybody failing tests and stuff like that, we were talking about that in the very beginning, and GSP, I know he's a big advocate about it, wouldn't come out and fight. But as far as everybody knows, little young Bobby, he don't do any of that, so it takes away everything you're saying why you don't want to fight. Well, guess what? You got a guy holding the champion of your weight class, who's, to my knowledge, clean as can be. Fight him. If you really are an advocate of standing up for what you believe in, the steroids and all the performance-enhancing drugs and things like that, well, there he is, your champ. Hasn't been popped, done anything, to my knowledge, never has, never will.
And it's definitely a fight
he's natural Bob.
It's definitely a fight that all the fans would want to see. Jens, we're going to
perfect now.
We're going to have to let you go in just a second, but, we want to ask you something really quickly. Let's discuss your return from retirement, to ONE FC. Many fans were excited to hear you be making a comeback after such a legendary career. Some are wondering what motivates you to come back for another fight after doing so much in the sport. What drives Jens Pulver to compete?
I had the struggles, and I don't hide from them. I had the mental struggles that made me, I was losing to dumb things, shooting into a guillotine, getting caught. The losing streak I went on, it wasn't knockouts where I'm sitting there, I don't know my name. I lost hope, man. And go get the movie Seabiscuit. Heck, man. Or we in Australia, go get Far Lap. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And you got to bring the animal back, man. You got to bring the spirit back inside him, because that one loss turns to two losses, and you just lose it. And then you start thinking down on yourself, and that's the worst thing you want to do. But when I come out here, one of the reasons why I wanted to do it is, one, it'll be the first time ever I wouldn't have to actually experience jet lag, so that whales. I've never been able to do that. Two, I love Richie Cranny and the coaching staff that's here, Thiago, me, Rachel, everybody that coaches these Wimp Warriors. I believe in what they teach, and what better way to prove it to all the individuals that are here, that not only do I believe what we're teaching you, I use it. So minus the simple fact that I've been doing this for a long time and I'm quote-unquote Jens Pulver, and you're doing this as a bucket list and may only fight one time, what we're teaching you, I do the same thing. So we're not giving you just some kind of fluff. We're not giving you something just to kill some time. We're teaching you things that I want to learn and I want to use, and I want to, and I want to. That was one of my bigger motives. But above that, 40, man, 40. When I was a kid growing up, I was scared to death of just saying 40. To me, that was death. Gray-haired, shriveled up, dude, look at me. I feel phenomenal. I'm like, oh, my God, I feel incredible. So that's my bucket list. That's my gift to myself, being 40 years old. I sat out for a year now. Haven't touched, haven't trained, haven't done anything. I'm away from my wife. I'm away from my kids. I'm not even going to get into the epiphanies and the dream I had, because I did write it down. It was 6 years ago, and my wife is just like, oh, my God, she's just tripping. I wrote this thing down 6 years ago, but I'm not getting into it. So but right now I'm doing everything. I'm doing everything I said I would do 6 years ago. And I'm talking about all the way from being away from them, putting myself into when I say miserable state, meaning I don't have my family with me. I'm so far away I couldn't hop in a car and drive for 5 hours and see them. But I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in the Wimp to Warrior family. I believe in passing on the words and the things that we learned, the encouragement, the training, the regimens that I've been through in my life. Coaches saved me when I was growing up. My brother's serving 55 years in prison. My dad shoved a shotgun down my throat when I was 5 and said he was going to kill me. Coaches raised me. They made me into the man I am today, and now it's my turn. It's my turn to be the mentor. It's my turn to be the coach, and I get to do it out here with the Wimp to Warrior family. And I get to do it in front of all these people, and it's right where I'm supposed to be. As hard and as ironic as that sounds, because, God, I miss my wife, but you know what? She's sitting on Skype, and I can wave to her on the computer right now. What's up? And you know what I mean? I still get to see him. This is right where I'm supposed to be. So everything I've been through in my world led me to here. I'm on the right path.
Absolutely. Well put, Jens. Guys, you can check out Wimp to Warrior at www.wimptowarrior.com.au. It looks to be a very, very exciting season, probably one of the best ones yet. And make sure to follow.
We have open classes. Come down to the gym. I'm actually coaching all day. I love it. I'm coaching and hanging out, training with everybody. I love it. I'm having a blast.
Anybody in Sydney or traveling around Australia, make sure you stop by the gym and follow Jens on Twitter at Jens_Pulver. Jens, when your fight does get announced around May, we'll have you back on the show. There's so much left to cover. I feel like we just went through a couple of questions, but thank you so much for coming onto the program. It's just been an absolute pleasure having a legend like yourself on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I know I talk long, but I talk long, but that's my way of proving that I'm not punchy just yet. So I'm long-winded. Thank you guys very much for your time.
And there you have it, guys. The one and only Jens Pulver. It's a pleasure to have him on the show. So good to chat to him. I feel like we barely covered. I feel like there was so much more to cover with Jens. We obviously had an allotted time slot with him that I believe, went about 10 minutes over. So we'll definitely have him on the show in the future. There's so much more to cover. But, it's been a really big weekend in MMA, Dennis. So much to talk about. I mean, you had 3 events. You had Bellator World Series of Fighting, UFC Henderson versus Thatch. The one that we're going to focus on is, of course, the UFC event, Henderson versus Thatch. A lot to talk about. Dennis, what did you think of the event as a whole?
Yeah, it was one of those things. I didn't know where Broomfield was, and I found out it was in Colorado from watching the event. And Broomfield is a cool name for a town. So that's something cool to find out. I feel like I'm going to find out all about different cities across America because of all these events now.
Yeah.
Every time the UFC has like a new event in a new city, I'll be like, oh, wow, like, one day I'm gonna go on a trip to America and visit all the cities that I've enjoyed finding out information about through the events. But no, I thought I was actually really excited that Benson Henderson stepped up and replaced. Was it Wonderboy Thompson who was supposed to fight Brendan in the main event?
Yeah, it was Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and they were replacing, I believe it was not Uriah Hall, sorry. It was meant to be Tarek Safadine and Matt Brown in the main event. So that whole card got pretty much screwed up.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I was actually really excited to see Benson Henderson fight. I mean, terrible stuff there with all the injuries, but I think, I was very excited about it. Anytime Benson Henderson fights, I'm always interested about it. And the card, seemed fun. One of the things about it, obviously, was, there's been some dynamo cards lately, and I suppose for a lot of people, this is one of those cards where if you have to do something on the weekend with your family and you're not like a hardcore UFC fan, you might maybe take this one off from watching it live and maybe rewatch the replays, some of the highlights. But nevertheless, there were a couple of matchups I was excited about. What about you, Cass? When you hear the UFC is coming to Broomfield, do you cancel everything off your schedule to watch this show?
I don't cancel everything off my schedule. I immediately grab Google Maps and find out where Broomfield is. And of course, we learned, Colorado, altitude. When you say altitude, I'm kind of like, it's one of those places. Gotcha.
Like John Denver would have an album that comes out of there.
That's what I feel like. Yeah, like there'd be a country singer or something. We're probably throwing all sorts of things about Broomfield that probably aren't even true.
We're losing fans in Broomfield with every sentence that comes out of our mouth. They're just, not only are they turning the episode off, they're probably unsubscribing from our channels and writing an angry message in red writing as we speak. Yeah,
the Submission Radio lab technicians are shaking their heads at us right now, and they've got a graph, and it's going on a downhill declining scale, and it's Broomfield fans. But to all 3 of our Broomfield fans, we do apologize. We're just taking the piss. If you ever have a show of your own, you want to take the piss out of Melbourne or Australia, we welcome it. That's the way we are here. Let's talk about the fights themselves. I feel like with this card, it was hit and miss with some fights. Some of the prelim fights I found to be a little bit more exciting than the main events. And some of the main event fights were, I wouldn't say filled with controversy, but there were a few interesting things. I want to start off talking about Chaz Skelly versus Jim Allers. That was a really fun fight on the prelims. It was following, obviously, Zach Makovsky against Tim Elliott. Another fun fight. Chaz Skelly, man, they talked a lot during the actual fight about his 13-day turnaround last year. There was actually one point where we really wanted to get Chaz on the show. Due to a scheduling conflict, it didn't end up happening. There you go, fans, behind the scenes. But this guy, fun guy, fun fighter. You look at Chaz Skelly, I mean, he's not like this shredded Hulk of a human being, but he puts on really good fights. He's incredibly tough. I mean, he had his ankle really badly hurt in the fight, didn't he, Dennis?
Yeah, that's right. He ended up in that, ankle sort of leg lock there that was put on by Jim. And, for the people at home, and including ourselves, it just didn't look like that it did that much damage. And, to our surprise, Chaz really broke it down after the fight. And no pun intended, and talked about the 2 pops in his ankle. So I'm just full of jokes today, guys. But it was surprising, and that's exactly one of those things, I mean, Jim just looked so focused with that leg lock. He must have known what was going on, and for Chaz to fight on, and he said it himself. And this is what I like about this Chaz Skelly guy. This is why I think he's one of those characters in MMA that everybody should take notice of. He said, "Look, my ankle. I don't remember word for word, but he pretty much said, look, my ankle was gone. I thought, why not just keep fighting and see what happens, or something like that." I mean, most people, their ankle pops a few times, they're already like, oh crap, it's all over. Most people would give up. Like I know that if I had a serious injury like that and I was like my ankle's gone, it's probably a good chance or possibility I'd give up in whatever sport I was doing. For Chaz, he's like, why not just go at it and do my thing? And he was going in this. He had some issues cutting weight. He spoke about the high altitude and how difficult it was for him to get down to the weight because he had a broken foot and he came back from a surgery. And I mean, the guy, he didn't look like he was in amazing shape, and he's just a gamer. And I think he's one of those guys that really sort of show what MMA is all about. And there's a lot of guys out there, and they'll have a lot of, and I'm not going up against any guys or anything like that, but there's a lot of guys out there, and they'll create a lot of excuses like, oh, had an injury, or oh, this or that. And Chaz is one of those guys that shows you, look, it doesn't matter. If you have the heart of a fighter, you go in and you'll just fight, and that's why I think that's why I love him. I think I might have a man crush on Chaz Scally.
Yeah. I don't blame you. He's a sexy beast, the old scallywag. And
the scallywag.
The scallywag.
When he's coming on the show, we're doing the tap out round, and that's going to be one of his proposed nicknames.
That's going to be the only one. You don't need any other options. It's a scallywag.
Choice, yeah.
End of thread. No, look, I mean, and the thing is, you were mentioning about fighters and the excuses. Look, I think what it is a lot of times guys will fight on, but they, like in this case, Chaz won. Other times guys may lose, and then they may mention, hey, look, my ankle was stuffed or my arm or whatever the case is. And, with Chaz, I mean, he mentioned it after the fight. It just so happened that he won. So, win or lose, I don't think it would have necessarily been an excuse, but I'll tell you what, anything ankle related, scares the crap out of me. Dennis, you and I, we've done Sambo. They have a lot of leg locks and inverted heel hooks and stuff like that. And that stuff's
scary.
really, really, really scary. When you feel like any kind of ankle lock or heel hook going on, it is really scary. And then when you hear guys talking about like, if you put it on fully, like you may never walk again and stuff like that. So when you have Chaz Scally with his ankle, popped and kept on fighting and did, it's not like he won a decision. He won the TKO, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but that's really impressive stuff. And yeah, I like Chaz Scally. Obviously, he's a gamer and he stepped up on about 2 weeks' notice last year. So he's called the Scrapper. It's not quite as good as the Scallywag, but I can see why he goes with that. He is the Scrapper, and the name is very fitting. Now, the interesting thing about this one was there was a clearly illegal knee at the end of the fight.
Yeah.
It wasn't just illegal; it was super illegal. The
if there was like a different shades of red scale for how illegal it was, it would be like the most reddest red you have.
Yeah, I don't know what that red is, but like the people at Derwent would probably be like, oh yeah, that's the old whatever. No, look, with that one, the official, they mentioned during the fights, they mentioned how the official was going to stop the fight anyway, but when you watch the super slow-mo replay on the Phantom Cam, the referee is not going in there, he's not moving it to stop the fight or anything like that. I can understand if he was thinking about it and he was in his mind like, yeah, I'm going to stop it, and he just wasn't moving, it just didn't happen, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he didn't get in there fast enough, and Chaz landed that illegal knee. I will say, to Chaz's credit and the referee's credit and whatever, it looked like the fight was done. It looked like Jim was out of there. He probably could have hit him with any shot and it would have been, out of there. It's a shame that the illegal knee landed, and honestly, before they even showed the replay, you could clearly see that was illegal. When I saw that knee, I was like, oh shit.
Illegal.
Yeah, illegal. It was just kind of lucky, I guess, that they did stop the fight and it didn't go to the next round because there literally was 1 second left. But look, all in all, awesome. Did you have any thoughts about that illegal knee, Dennis?
Yeah, I believe the guy that was refereeing the fight, he said that he didn't see it.
Oh.
So, I mean, he was probably at a bad angle. But there is no excuse for these illegal knees. I think I like the fact that Chaz was like, look, I threw an illegal knee. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to do it. But yeah, hopefully, we don't like to see illegal knees on Submission Radio. We're anti-illegal knees. We want them out of here. And did you notice that all the referees in Broomfield, I don't know what it was, whether like the referees from like Vegas all of them didn't want to travel over, or I don't know what, but all of them looked like they were like extras from Breaking Bad. Have you noticed that? Those are the guys with crazy beards. The one guy, I don't know, it looked like he was straight out of Breaking Bad. So that's my professional analysis on that one.
I did now that you've mentioned it.
Everybody go back and watch over UFC Broomfield. And with the exception of that guy who was talking to Cole Miller with his headbutt,
How nice was he? How nice was that guy?
That's a guy that you would want to like, I don't know, you'd want to befriend that guy and you'd want to come to him with like issues in your life. And it might be like something really major, but he'd just calmly like be like, it's okay. Take your time. It's all right. Don't worry. You killed someone. It's fine. Don't worry. It's like nothing's gonna happen. But yeah, he was a great guy. We should become friends with that guy.
Champion. I'd buy that guy a beer if I saw him in the street. If you had like issues with your wife or something, he'd be like, all right, just come over here, just go in that corner, take 5 minutes, you ready to give another shot? And you'd be like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Like, all right, we'll go for it whenever you're ready. Before we talk about that fantastic referee, let's talk about Dan Kelly's fight. Aussie Dan Kelly, Judo Dan, he defeated Patrick Walsh. This is a fight that honestly, we were following the tweets on social media, got absolutely slain. I don't think I saw any positive things other than the Fox Sports Twitter, and even they were saying that it was a sloppy first round and things like that. It wasn't the most technical fight. It wasn't even the 50th most technical fight. Now, I'm not trying to sound like an asshole, because if I threw a punch, I'd probably end up punching myself in the face. That's how uncoordinated I am. But, it's just a little bit worrying when you see guys like this in the UFC, and a lot of people are jumping on it saying, man, I can't believe these guys are actually fighting in the UFC. To be honest, I'm not saying either one of them shouldn't be in the UFC. I'm just saying when you got a guy like Dan Kelly, 4-time judo Olympian, I was so surprised not to see him use any judo. We jumped in our Twitter beforehand. We posted a little tweet. Judo Dan Kelly, who wants to see some judo throws, and no judo throws. And not only that, but in the whole fight, there wasn't a single kick or a single knee thrown at all. It was a very sloppy boxing match. And to be honest with you, Dan Kelly looked like he lost that first round, even though I think the commentators were saying he was countering. He got hit with some big shots. Patrick Walsh was throwing, crazy wild looping hooks, lefts, rights, everything. I saw what Patrick was doing. He was ducking down, faking like he was going for the takedown, and then he would pop up and, throw a looping hook, and Dan Kelly was eating a lot of those, and it wasn't until the second and third round that Dan sort of started countering. And, the commentators were saying how he wanted to come into this fight and really show off his kickboxing. He was dedicating a lot of time to his kickboxing and striking, which is great. If you've already got great judo, good. You should focus on your striking. It wasn't one of those fights where he came out and it was showing what he had learned and the highlights and things like that. And I'm not sure. Maybe it's a case of Dan being a little bit stiff. Maybe it was the fact that, obviously training and a live opponent are very different. I don't know if it was the pressure. But I'm honestly surprised this fight was on the main card as opposed to the prelims. When you've got like Chaz Skelly, you've got Efren Escudero, even Tim Elliott and Zach Makovsky. I found it very strange that this one was on the main card, and a lot of people on Twitter agreed. Having said that, I'm happy that Dan Kelly, being an Aussie, got exposure on the main card, but it just wasn't a great fight for exposure. What was your take? What did you think, Dennis?
Well, I want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that, I actually, you and me, Casper, we've done a whole bunch of, some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, some Sambo, we're really beginners. We're just guys who like to go in the gym and have a play around. But, I recently did some judo. I did some judo over the last couple of weeks, and I got to say, man, my body has never been sorer. Now, this Dan Kelly, he's a hero when it comes to judo. He really represents Australia really well, but he's just got so many injuries. His body is just torn to shreds. And you can just see it. A lot of guys talk about Dan Henderson going into that octagon, and you could just see that he just doesn't move the same like he used to, and it's tough to watch. And sometimes, this isn't being negative on Dan because he's such a great guy, such a great competitor, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult to see Dan move around in that octagon because his body just can't keep up with what he wants to do. I'm sure he's thinking in his head, I want to throw this combination, that combination, but maybe he just can't do it, with the body that he's got now. The fight itself, and this is again, respect to both competitors, but it was a bit of a joke. Patrick Walsh, he was doing something that I can describe as a bad Roy Jones Jr. / Anderson Silva impression in that ring. And that boxing that he was doing, it was just awful. There's just no way around it. It was just terrible. His hands were down. When he was ducking and weaving, his head was so far down at the bottom and to the side that any competent striker would have knocked him out, straight away. I don't know what he was acting in that octagon like he was some kind of world championship fighter. I don't think that, did too well with a lot of the fans around the world watching the fight. Then you had Dan Kelly that couldn't capitalize on it for a long, long time. He was stiff like a brick wall. Couldn't really do much. Eventually he did realized that, Pat's face was just there. Pat just got gassed. I mean, yeah, I got to agree with you, Cass. It was a horrible, horrible fight. I wonder what Dana White thought when he was watching it. Now, hopefully, maybe Dan was just hurt, or maybe it was just nerves. I don't know what it was. And hopefully when he comes out next time, we see some improvements. But the other thing is, and of course, I believe Dan trains here in Melbourne, and there's a lot of great Melbourne gyms. I believe he comes from a very, very good Melbourne gym, and his corner is a very, very good. I'd just like to hear a bit more direction in the corner. I know that they gave him a couple of tips and stuff, but I'm a fan of very direct direction, exactly telling a guy what he should do, exactly what combinations he should throw, really talk to a guy in between the rounds. I just don't feel like his corner did enough in between the rounds, but all in all, a very awkward fight, very awkward situation. Didn't just wasn't a win for anyone in that regard.
Yeah, and when you factor in the catch weight of obviously Patrick Walsh blowing it on the scales, coming in at 191.5 pounds when it was meant to be middleweight, so he went in 6.5 pounds over. I mean, he really blew it. I don't know that Patrick Walsh has been in the UFC before, but if he hasn't, then I don't think he'll be welcome back, to be honest. Which I'm not saying I hope happens. I hope that Patrick Walsh, comes back and he cleans up his act and he makes weight and everything like that. Just like I hope that Dan Kelly, goes away and works more on his striking, and maybe next time will be that kickboxing clinic that he wants to, put on a show, and hopefully goes better for him. I just think, if I'm his trainer, and I'm certainly no MMA trainer, but if I'm his trainer, I would definitely be making sure that he throws more of a diverse striking game, more knees, more kicks. I mean, that Patrick's face was there for the knee, all night, or even just, getting close, use your judo. So that's my take on the fight.
And I think Patrick Walsh was actually on the Ultimate Fighter 19.
He was, that's right.
Yeah. And even on that show, he was a little bit difficult to watch. I don't know, he just has this personality. I don't think it goes well with the fans, man. And not a great situation for Pat, especially the fact that, I don't know, his corner gave him some good advice and he just completely ignored it a lot of the time. It just, wasn't impressive from all regards. So hopefully Pat learns from this experience in more ways than one. Let's just leave it at that before we say something bad.
Let's talk about the next fight. This is by contrast, this is a really impressive fight. It was Neil Magny going on for, I believe, his 6th win in a row in a welterweight division. That's huge. I believe he's got one of the most active streaks in the UFC currently, and he fought a lot. I think he fought like 5 times in 2014. Comes back against Kichi Kunamoto. Dennis, what did you think of the fight?
Yeah, great fight for Neil. He looked so sharp. He looked like he had energy galore. I mean, up in that high altitude, he just looked absolutely fantastic. Really forced that submission, forced that position, just looked absolutely sensational. And he's improved, leaps and bounds. I mean, he's been in the UFC for a really, really long time now. I mean, he started off at UFC 157, so not a really, really long time, but a couple of years now. And I mean, he's had a couple of tough losses here and there. I think he's really improved. And now, I've been on social media and people are going, Neil Magny, who's next for Neil Magny? He's got that big streak going. He looked amazing in this fight. I'm just very excited because I think he's coming into his own. What did you think of Neil, Cass?
Just before we talk about the actual fight, the interesting thing is that at one point Neil Magny was, I don't know if he was officially scheduled, but he was definitely linked to Josh Koscheck to fight him at UFC 184. 184. I remember when that started sort of getting announced, not necessarily by the UFC, but when it started trickling out as news, people were not shocked, but interested at how tentatively the fight was booked. It seemed like, this is going to be Josh Koscheck's last chance. And of course, Josh Koscheck's now versing Jake Ellenberger at UFC 184, which I'm really excited about.
That's a good fight, isn't it? Josh Koscheck, Jake Ellenberger, both guys, few losses. That's a good matchup.
That kind of is one of those loser leaves town fights.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying I want either one of those guys to leave, especially not Jake Ellenberger, because I still feel like he's young and he's been up against absolute killers. And you could actually kind of say the same about Josh Koscheck. But Josh Koscheck's one of those guys that, he's getting up there. And I thought that this was going to be the fight for Neil Magny where he's going to get a step up in competition. It would have been, 5 wins in a row. Josh Koscheck, okay, that makes sense. Josh is still dangerous, but at the same time, he's on a downslide. If they did go with the route for Neil Magny to, give him that signature win over a legend, cool. Now he's fighting a name opponent. Anyway, they didn't. They put him up against Kichi Kunamoto. I honestly think that it was already time for him to step up. I mean, he's on a streak now, but he already was, and in every fight he's had, he's looked really impressive. He's had a couple of losses back in the day against Seth Paczynski and Sergio Moraes, but it's the time is now. Not to sound cliche, but the time is now. I think Neil Magny is a really hot prospect, and actually he's past the point of prospect. He needs a big name, and I can't wait. Definitely someone in the top 10. I really want to see him get tested, because sometimes it annoys me when you see a guy just sort of, Matt Brown was on an 8-fight win streak, and people were saying title shot. This guy's on a 6-fight win streak. Now, he hasn't fought the caliber of people that Matt Brown has, and not even so much the caliber, just the fact that Matt Brown was like destroying guys, whereas Neil Magny is just, very, very dominant, and he's had, I think, like 3 finishes now in his streak. So, look, he looked great. It's awesome, and it's good that he fought a guy like Kunimoto and ended him, and actually, got the submission, and he got the performance of the night, so I'm really happy for that. For me, though, I was expecting him to run through Kunimoto anyway, so I'm not really that surprised. For me, from the get-go, as soon as the fight started, for me, it was who's Neil Magny going to fight next. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, no, it's good. And, the UFC, I agree with you. Sometimes these guys go on a streak and they don't capitalize on it. And then eventually, they lose their streak and they lose their edge, and maybe they've, just had enough fights, and then you just never see them versus the guys that you want them to fight, And that happened to guys like George Stopolopoulos and a few other guys in the division. So hopefully Neil gets the good treatment and gets a big name opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about Max Holloway versus Cole Miller next. Now, this is an interesting fight. I like how Max Holloway basically did his best impression of a tornado, and as Nick Diaz would say, spinning shit throughout the whole fight. Lots of spinning stuff, crazy combinations. A couple of headbutts there. Cole Miller, he was protesting quite a lot during the fight. What did you think about this one, Dennis?
Yeah, it was one of those headbutts that wasn't really exactly Max's fault. It's just one of those ones that just happened in the fight. I believe Cole was sort of even pulling him towards him, just sort of going for that clinch situation where it happened. It's just an unfortunate thing. That's a part of fighting that can't be avoided. And, Cole Miller, obviously, I believe the commentator was talking about, he had some difficult times, had some issues with a newly born child and going through some stuff there. Obviously, Cole Miller was supposed to fight Conor McGregor, which would have been the biggest fight of his career, and could have catapulted him into a main event player if he would have won that fight. But nevertheless, Max Holloway was a big name. Just very impressed with Max Holloway. I've always been a Cole Miller fan, always will be. To me, he's just one of those old school guys that you love to watch. And he's only 30 years old, but he just looked very, very flat-footed. He needs to stop being so flat-footed in his fights and get a bit of spring in his step. I think that would really help him. He landed some good shots on Max. He had a couple of good moments, but I don't think it's the best Cole Miller that we've seen. I don't know whether it's because of the stuff going on in his personal life or just basically because Max Holloway is this 23-year-old assassin who could possibly be one of the best guys in the division one day, But either way, I thought, Max looked amazing, and, Cole lived to fight another day. What did you think, Cass? What did you think of the fight?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you mentioned Max Holloway being an assassin. He's another guy who's really coming up in that division. I mean, he's got, I think, 5 wins in a row, and he's finished a lot of his recent guys like Akira Kurosani and Clay Collard. Honestly, he's doing really well. I'm trying to think if that was the fight that Akira Kurosani decided to retire. Actually, no, sorry, that was Sam Cecilia. But that's the thing, Cole Miller, he's beaten Sam Cecilia. That, to me, is a big win. So then to go on to lose to Max Holloway, I think we've seen Cole Miller do better. I think, he's had a really long layoff. He had like a year-long layoff. And then, like you said, he had a lot of issues. I believe his child is 5 weeks premature. That's a scary thing for any parent. I don't have any kids, but if it happened to me, I'd be very scared. With Cole Miller, one thing that to me was a little bit frustrating was how he wouldn't let that headbutt go, and he was saying it to his corner, and he was telling them, and to me it was kind of like, they saw the headbutt, they know about it, you know about it, but you have to move past it. You can talk about that headbutt all you want. It's not going to win you the fight. It's not going to change anything, and then it happened again. And I understand he's pissed off at the referee. I don't know how anyone could be pissed off at that referee. Such a nice guy, such a gentleman. But in all honesty, I really think that Coleman, I don't know whether that headbutt shook him and really just kind of distracted him, but I think rather than focusing on the headbutt, he should have focused more on the fight, because, that headbutt, regardless, wasn't going to change the outcome. So I think this may have been one of those fights where Cole Miller, he's had such a long layoff. He needs to go back, train, hopefully comes back a lot sooner. But my biggest takeaway from this is, bam, you've got pretty much a new star, Max Holloway, after this fight.
Yeah, Max is a great guy. And some of those kicks that he threw near the end there, I mean, I don't know if he's been watching Conor McGregor highlights and thinks that, hey, these kicks get more pay-per-view buys, but I like it. I like these kicks, and I like this Max Holloway, and I'm excited to see who he fights next.
Oh, well, I was actually going to say, yeah, well, he's fighting Cub Swanson next in April 18th, UFC on Fox 15. So that's huge. He's going from a Fight Night to UFC on Fox event, and he's going up against Cub Swanson, who obviously just fought, not for the title, but for the clear number one contender spot. So
great fight. It's a great fight.
That's huge. And we saw Cub Swanson, obviously he got, demolished in the wrestling department by Frankie Edgar. Man, safe to say, this is going to be a stand-up friendly affair. So after all this crazy combination seeing from Max Holloway, and then you got Cub Swanson, and he loves to bang, this is going to be a really awesome fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I just can't get over the fact that he's 23 years old. But, speaking of good fights and interesting matchups, we just touched on this earlier, Cass. The main event switched a couple of times, ends up being Benson Henderson versus Brendan Thatch. Benson, he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Let's not really beat around the bush here. He wanted to come back as soon as he could. He's had a bit of difficulty recently. Obviously he was the champion, but he did have a couple of losses quite recently. In his last fight, he obviously lost to Cowboy Cerrone. He wanted to come back. He felt like he won that fight. It actually happened on January 18th, which is a sacred day in my life as it's my birthday. But, he felt like he won that fight and he wanted to come back. He wanted to fight in welterweight. Now, Cass, when you saw those guys at the weigh-ins standing eye to eye, toe to toe, did you think that this size difference may be too much for Benson?
I wasn't sure. Look, something came out at one point about Rick Story saying how he went down to train at the lab and he trained with Benson Henderson. And Benson Henderson broke him in training. A pretty big welterweight. When you see him, he's big, he's stocky. I mean, I would say he's a huge welterweight. And he's saying that Benson Henderson broke him. So it was one of those things, I'm not going to lie and pretend like I knew it was going to happen or I predicted it. I really had no idea what was going to happen in this fight. But and honestly, there was so many question marks in this. But, the size difference... Honestly, I had no idea. To me, it was like Brendan Thatch, like, he had a lot of good wins. Obviously, lots of first round, lots of destruction, this and that. But we've said this on the show time and time again, guys that obviously, that often finish other guys in the first round, they get to that second, third, fourth, fifth round, and it's a whole different ball game. Even Chris Weidman, I've said it before, I think Chris Weidman started a gas in his fight against Lyoto Machida, and that's Chris Weidman. He's the champion. So for Brendan Thatch to have so many first round, wins, and then you've got Benson Henderson, I mean, that guy, he has a lot of decision wins. I mean, he has a lot of those decision wins in 5-round fights. So I thought, if anything, if Benson's going to catch him, I thought, if Benson's going to lose, it's going to be in the first or second round. If he's going to catch him, it's going to be in like the third or fourth or fifth round.
Yeah, absolutely. And, before we break this fight down, Brendan, I reckon he's a great guy. He's got a great look. And I was happy to see him in the main event because he's just been causing destruction all through the division. And I just don't feel like he's gotten the spotlight that he deserves. I think this event... a lot of guys around the world, this might be the first time they watch Brendan fight and really see what he's all about. So in that regard, I thought that was pretty cool. Now, going into the fight, Cass, when you were watching that first round, what were your thoughts? Did you think that Benson stood a chance? Did you think that Brandon could have come in there and sort of finished him? What was going through your head there?
Well, I think, Brendan he wasn't going out there and just causing destruction from the first second, like obviously the UFC likes to hype these fights and the hyperbole machine is in full effect and talking about he's a killer. And obviously as the fight started, you could tell that this was a measured fight. Brendan, he had a long layoff, he hadn't fought since 2013. I mean, that's a huge layoff. It was about a year and a quarter since November 2013. And, let's be honest, he beat Paulo Thiago and Justin Edwards in the UFC. So even though he destroyed those guys, they weren't exactly ex-champions or anything like that. You could clearly see the size difference, and you could clearly see that he had a lot of strength advantage on Benson Henderson. The thing that stuck out to me was that regardless, win, lose, or draw, I didn't see Benson Henderson staying long in the welterweight division. Once I saw that size advantage, and the thing is, Brendan Thatch, he's not even the biggest welterweight. Like, he's decently sized. I think he's 6'2", but he's not like, crazy muscle bound or anything like that. So I thought, man, if he doesn't have that restless strength or anything like that. So I thought, man, if Benson Henderson is struggling in the strength department against this guy, welterweight is definitely not his division. What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Exactly right. But, in regards to the fight, Brendan looked great. He threw a lot of great combinations. He was pushing the momentum throughout the fight. I really thought Benson was going to be in trouble in a couple of exchanges. Benson throwing some great body shots, really staying in that fight. You could tell he had a chip on his shoulder. He had a bit of attitude in that ring. He really wanted to show what he could do. But I guess the big thing was for Brendan was it just exposed a little bit of a hole in his game, which is obviously his wrestling and his ground game. I mean, walking away from this fight, I think he would focus on that aspect of his game now that, other opponents might know that it's important to take him down because they could win the fight there. Obviously when Benson got him down, he really dominated him. His coach, who's his coach? He's at the lab. He's got Crouch, I think.
John Crouch.
John Crouch. He was on the money with that game plan, wasn't he? He knew when Benson was going to get him down to the ground, he was just going to dominate him. And I mean, when he did get him down to the ground, he had a couple of nicely timed takedowns. I mean, it was just evident that he was just miles ahead of Brendan when it came to the ground. All in all, I got to say, I was very impressed with Benson, even though he does have more experience. I really thought that Brendan was a tough test. I thought, hey, he's taking a big risk here because if he loses twice, now you're really in a hole. Where do you go after this? So I was very impressed with him. Cass, this win for Benson, what does it do for him? If you're the UFC, if you're the fans, what does this do for Benson Henderson?
Man, I think it's huge for Benson Henderson to go up a weight class and get a win there against a guy who he wasn't any kind of joke. Like Brendan Thatch, he may be a little bit unexperienced, but this is only second loss in his career. And then you've got obviously Benson Henderson coming off 2 losses in a row. This is huge. And I think he really needed this win because even though in his last 2 losses, he had his first ever knockout loss against Rafael dos Anjos. I thought it was a great stoppage, but a lot of people would debate that. And then you've got a very controversial decision against Donald Cowboy Cerrone that a lot of people thought he won. I think over time, people just remember, they don't necessarily remember the finer details. They just think, okay, he lost to that guy. And then if he lost to Brendan Thatch, not only would it be, he was coming off the first ever back-to-back losses in his career, and this would be 3 in a row. I mean, that's crazy. Some guys get fired after 3 in a row. So I think he was in danger country, even though he was going up in weight class. But now that he's beaten a guy in the weight class above, I think that's huge for him, for his career, and for his momentum. I hope that, and he called out Rory McDonald right after the event, which to me was crazy. And that fight, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, is not going to happen. Dana White has already confirmed that Rory McDonald does have someone scheduled, but he won't reveal who. I hope that Benson Henderson goes down to lightweight. I know that both him and Cowboy, they're the type of guys that want to fight anytime, anywhere. That's really respectable, really admirable. But at the end of the day, you want to see guys win. And I just think if he did go up against a guy like Rory McDonald, that would be terrible. Everyone's got a chance, but I would bet a pretty decent amount of money on Rory McDonald. So I think I want to see Benson Henderson go down to lightweight and, have a crack at some of the other lightweights. I mean, at the end of the day, he's had a couple of losses, but those are against really tough guys. He's lost to the champion, he's lost to Rafael dos Anjos, he's fighting the champion, and then he got Donald Cerrone, who's on like a million fight win streak now. So it's not like It's not like he's lost to, just nobodies. He's lost to some of the toughest guys. So I think put him back in there with anyone in the lightweight division, and he's absolutely got a chance. He used to be the champion of that division. Let's have a look. In the last 5 years, no, more than that, sorry. I'm just having a look at his record. Since 2007, right? He lost to Rocky Johnson in 2007. Since then, the only losses he's had against Anthony Pettis twice, Rafael dos Anjos, and Donald Cerrone. So that's a pretty impeccable record right there. He's beaten Frankie Edgar twice, Nate Diaz, Gil Melendez, Josh Thompson. Put him in there with anyone in the lightweight division, he'll be able to hang with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just looks like he's improving every time we see him as well. So very, very good stuff there. And, overall, I thought it was a great finish to the event. I thought it was a great fight. It was very exciting. Benson Henderson doesn't always have the most exciting fights, but this one was very good to watch. Great story. And I think what else could you expect from an event like this in Broomfield? I think they got their money's worth. There were some strange, awkward fights with Dan Kelly. There were some cool finishes in the prelims, and there were some interesting fights like the Max Holloway fight, and then you got that main event. So all in all, I think the fans got their money's worth, and people watching at home got to see some fun stuff. So, a successful event for the UFC considering everything else.
And just one more thing on that fight, it's one thing that Benson Henderson beat Thatch. It's another thing that he actually finished him. I think that's another thing that you got to mention as well. A lot of people were saying how because of the size difference, Benson Henderson's going to get killed by this guy who finishes guys in the first round. Not only did he beat him, but he beat him in convincing fashion. So a lot of respect to Benson Henderson. But look, I think that's enough from us for another week. It's been awesome chatting about MMA. It's been awesome chatting to our guests. Big thank you to Urijah Faber and Jens Pulver. Of course, we'll be back next week, same time, same place. We are available everywhere: Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn Radio. Pretty much any podcast directory or anything like that, we are there. Of course, YouTube. Let us know what you think. We live for comments. We live for feedback. Let us know in the YouTube comments. If you're watching on YouTube, let us know what you thought about the event. Something that interesting is coming up this weekend. Oh, sorry, not this weekend. This coming week, Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta are going to be talking about PEDs in MMA, what's going to happen, things like that. There's going to be a big press conference. It's going to be on, I believe, Wednesday in America, and here in Australia, it's going to be Thursday. So don't forget to check that out. Also on Thursday, our time, Friday, America time, there's going to be the UFC 184 press conference. Your friendly neighborhood submission radio are going to be on the press conference. We'll be having that on the YouTube channel. So that's going to be up probably about an hour after the actual press conference is live, the media call. So definitely check that out. We've got a ton more of other content. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. Dennis, before we go, any final parting words for the fans?
Yeah, two things. Number one, Benson Henderson, he set up that rear naked choke by doing this interesting kick to Brendan's stomach. Look back on the replay. It was a great setup. He popped forwards and then he locked in that rear naked choke. Yeah. And number two, Bill Goldberg, rumored to have a fight with Glory. We actually interviewed Bill a few weeks back, or it might be a month back. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it and you're not really a pro wrestling fan, this isn't really a pro wrestling interview. We do cover a lot of pro wrestling, but we talk a lot about MMA and kickboxing. If you want to find out what old Bill's doing with his life these days, have a listen. He talks about his training and his schedule. I highly recommend it to everybody who hasn't listened to it yet. Apart from that, Cass, that's all I've got.
Awesome. Yeah, just quickly with that Bill Goldberg interview, I think about the first half or maybe the first third is pro wrestling, and then afterwards pretty much all about MMA and Muay Thai. The guy trains Muay Thai like 3 times a week. King Mo recently was on our show and he talked about how he does not even want to get hit by Goldberg. That's how hard he hits. So it's pretty crazy that we spoke to him about a month and we suggested, hey, do you want to have a fight? What would it happen? And then here you go, a month later, Glory are talking to him about it. Not that it had anything to do with us. According to Goldberg, it's all social media, but really interesting stuff. Anyway, that's it from us for another week. We'll see you next week.